Okay, that's 3 o'clock according to my timepiece here. So I usually make the usual announcement that first of all, anyone who's come to the introduction to meditation class, the intro to meditation class is being held in a separate place to my right. Before you come into the hall, you go to the next hall, and there you will find the intro to meditation class being conducted. That's usually starting for sessions the first, second, third and fourth Saturday of the month. And for those of you who are wondering, that the sutta classes, this is the first Sunday tomorrow, so the sutta classes we held here on a Sunday afternoon, that will be beginning next week, not tomorrow. So anyway, that those who are here, this is the ongoing class on meditation, and we usually focus basically on the anapanasati, the mindfulness of the breathing, but the way I teach it over here is to get enough mindfulness, enough joy, enough relaxation to be able to watch that breath easily. And one of the things which I noticed, that if you just start and want to watch your breathing, often your mind is not calm enough, not aware enough to be able to do that. It does take a while for the awareness to build up so that you can watch the breath with ease. If when you're watching the breathing it feels tight, you have to put forth effort to do it, you find that soon tires you out. And this mind, which we're using, will prefer to do something which is more simple and more interesting. I've noticed over all these years of meditating, the mind always wants to actually find something which is joyful and happy. Okay. Is the internet on in there? Or whatever. Yeah, it is. Okay, good. Very good. So that's one of the reasons why the mind will wander off and find it hard to focus on anything in meditation, because it doesn't enjoy what you ask it to do. Remember, the mind is not under your control. You may think you can control it, but the truth of the matter is that you have to understand how the mind works. I know this is not a very good Buddhist simile, but there was this manual which had a lot of insight in it. It was called like the Chinese Art of War. And one of the sayings was like 1,000 battles won. So 1,000 battles fought, 1,000 battles won. When you know your enemy, you know yourself. If you know what the mind actually is and how it works, it's very easy to understand it. And when you understand it, you can actually know how to work with it. One of the things is that your mind does love having some delight, something of interest. And when you give it something of interest, something delightful, it will actually follow it. So the job is to make sure that when you are doing some meditation, what you are doing, you don't force the mind, but the mind is happy, it gets some fulfillment, it gets satisfied very easily when you give it some joy and delight. Which is one of the reasons why for years I've been teaching here, starting with mindfulness of your body, and then relaxing the body and noticing just how delightful the body feels when it's relaxed. If you haven't noticed this yet, that it's the delight when it comes up, it grabs your attention. So you don't have to put your attention on the breath grabs you and just invites you to watch it. It's a very pleasant thing to do. What is pleasant is very easy to follow. What is just hard work, you do much hard work in your life, and so if it's very hard in meditation, after a while you'll give up. It's noticing the joy in it. That is the difference. I remember even just years ago, when I first started meditating, I had some really good meditations, but even then, I wasn't sort of that keen on meditation because I didn't get the good meditations every time. And there was just talking over a cup of coffee with this Frenchman somewhere, and he said that what you should always remember is at the end of the meditation, just to spend a few moments reflecting on how your mind has changed over the period of meditation. The fact was that it had got more peaceful, and that peaceful was quite solid, you could understand it very easily, and it was very beautiful. And I noticed every meditation, I say that carefully, every meditation, I was always more peaceful at the end than I was when I started. It may not be much more peaceful, but it was certainly, I could see it was more peaceful. And that encouraged me. And that encouragement was all I needed to keep on going in the meditation, taking it deeper and deeper and deeper, and then getting some fantastic meditations. And that was all I needed, just some encouragement, because the truth is that your mind, it needs something delightful. When you think all the things you think about or fantasize about, why do you do that? And it's just because your mind is seeking some happiness, seeking delight, seeking some joy. If it doesn't find it anywhere else, it will concoct it itself. So that's one of the reasons why that when you do meditation you find some joy in it, even at the very beginning. Not only does it keep the mind on the object, on the path of peace, but it also satisfies it so much you don't need to seek all the other pleasures of the mind. The peace, joy of peace is much, much better. So when I do this scanning of the body, I make sure that I relax this body enough so it does feel very peaceful and joyful. And I notice that. And that means by the time I finished scanning my body and go up to the feelings around the eyes and the mouth, everything gets so relaxed, I notice it's not just things disappearing yet, it feels good before it disappears. It feels joyful and happy. There's a certain type of delight. There's many types of happiness in the world, but the delight of relaxation, of joy in the body, is just a nice, wonderful experience, and that I know will lead me into deeper joys when you go into the mind. You've probably heard me many times teaching here, the next thing is to go to developing peace. And what is peace? And once you understand what peace is, it is how delightful it is. People are always thinking all they want in the world is peace of mind. But as long as they've got peace of mind, then they tend to destroy it by having all these plans and things they should do to help the world and do everything else. It's a very noble thing to do, but they destroy their peace of mind. And they get frustrated, upset, angry. So what happens when we learn how to make the peace of mind the starting point and the fundamental starting point, make that strong first of all, then you can go out helping the world and helping others and helping yourself. But get that peace of mind strong first of all, understand what it is. And it is very delightful. So, for me anyway, every time I meditate and the peace of mind starts to come up, it just draws me in. It's easy to be with because I'm passive. I don't try to keep the peace of mind. I don't do anything. It just happens by itself when I really relax. That's one of the reasons why I say this is all about learning how to let go and let things be. And as I mentioned on Friday night, the word to let go. To let it go means you don't do it. Letting go is allowing something to go if it wants, it can stay if it wants, but you don't control it. Letting be is allowing it to stay if it wishes. That passive mind, where we are aware but we don't do anything, that is what creates a lot of the delight. And when the peace becomes very strong, it's something which is almost like you can worship. It's just gorgeous. The peace of mind, when you're just sitting there, you're perfectly aware and hardly anything moves. and it's magic. I don't know about your experience of peace in life, but a few times, one which always comes up, that many years ago, when I went to visit our monasteries in UK, that I thought at that time that you should visit your family at Christmas time. That was a tradition. This was in UK. But it's a stupid time to go visiting a place like England because it's freezing cold. And that year it was cold. There was lots of snow. And I recall vividly, even though this was so many years ago, going out into the snow sort of in the morning time because I was a visiting monk. I had no duties. And I went into the snow. It was, I think, minus 16 degrees or something outside. And there was snow everywhere. There was no cars on the road. The transport was shut down. There was no aircraft in the sky because I think the airport had shut down too. Everything was cold and still. Even all the animals, the birds in the sky, or the animals who usually scurry in the forest, they were all hibernating. Most sane people would be hibernating. All the other monks were also hibernating at that time in the morning, I reckon, because there's no one else in the forest except for me, but it was magical. It was magical because I was the only one like alive in that forest. Everything else was not moving. I had the forest to myself. And every time I did a step, then I could crunch the snow, the freshly fallen snow last night, and it made a noise. But when I stopped, it's like the whole world stopped with me. And everything was still, no noise, peaceful. And I remember feeling that, and it was magical. The joy, the delight of peace and silence. Fantastic. And I noticed that when you are still in meditation and peaceful, it's not that you get tired. You don't get into sloth and torpor because it's too delightful. Sloth and torpor usually comes because you're bored. This stuff is exhilarating, having silence in the mind. And that encourages you to go to that deeper stage of, again, like the silence, from the peace into the silence, where you don't say anything. It's when everything outside is silent and there's no sound at all from outside. You just don't want to disturb the beauty, the purity of that stillness. So you don't want to say anything. It stops you thinking. But when you stop thinking, it doesn't mean you're not aware. You go to a much deeper level of awareness. You can feel things without giving them a name. You can know things without trying to understand how it fits into everything else. You just experience this moment in a greater sense of purity. I think I said even last night that when you watch the stars, because I know I was a physicist before, and you learn the names of many of those stars, and whether they were just planets, or whether they were galaxies, or whether they're actually real stars. And you learn those names, and for a while you could look at those lights in the sky and imagine what they were. But when I stopped remembering their names and just looked, all I saw was their beauty, and it was inspiring. So you never bothered to try and describe what they were to yourself. And later on I always remember that when you give things a name, in the Middle Ages, in magic circles, if you found a person's name, you had power over them. If you didn't know their name, then you had no power over them. And I preferred watching the stars at night without trying to have power over them. Never gave them a name, never tried to understand what they actually were, but just enjoy the beauty of them. The same with in the forest. There's so many different trees and plants and animals as well, and instead of knowing their names, just enjoy their beauty and their peace without trying to own them, control them, give them a name, register them in the book of ownership. You never know that these days, even if you have a cat or a dog, you have to register it. It's almost like giving it a name. And most of the times, the cats or the dogs or the birds, they don't need names. You can just enjoy them for who they are. So as we meditate more and more, the silence, when we don't have to give things names, it gets much more peaceful. And one of old friends just asked me, how am I? And say, well, who are you? Sometimes we give ourselves names, but is that really who you are? Have anybody ever judged you when they see that you're from this town or that country or that race or that religion? And those sorts of judgments create a lot of problems later on. When you see a human being, they're just a human being, they're just a being. So you don't need to sort of worry about where they're from, how old they are, male or female or LGBTQIA+. They're just a being. Not naming them is much more freeing. That's one of the reasons why the stillness and the peace in meditation become a far more enjoyable place to hang out. And because it's enjoyable, the mind can stay there for long periods of time. And as it stays there for more periods of time, you find it becomes effortless. To put forth effort, you have to have a name. You have to understand some plan of what you're supposed to do and where you're supposed to go. It takes you away from the present moment. It takes you into the normal life of doing things and naming things. You don't understand life that way. You understand life and the joy of it by being still, being peaceful, letting things be, by disappearing, by vanishing. So you, the so-called driver of your destiny, vanishes for a little while. When it vanishes for a little while, you find that your destiny becomes so easy. You don't need to focus on anything. The breath comes up by itself. You watch it with ease, and you can't miss it, because it's delightful, it's pleasurable, it's happy. Well, the Buddha said that's how the piti sukha comes up with the meditation. And that piti sukha becomes huge. And it's not that you're getting dull, that your mind is becoming more alert, more and more and more aware. And with that awareness, there's a lot of bliss, a lot of happiness. And that's, of course, why I teach meditation this way here. So you can sit down for 45 minutes, pretty good period of time, and just without needing to focus on anything. You work hard enough in your life. You don't want to come to here and do more work. This is allowing your brain to take a rest and letting the mind just, as it says in the sutras, the mind leaps towards stillness and peace and soon becomes established in it and released. This is actually how the mind works. No need to focus or put forth effort, but instead to let it be. Know how the mind works. When the mind has joy, then it's very easy to watch it. Just like right now, it's a sunny day, or sunny afternoon. It's cold outside, but it's sunny, and I can just see the trees outside. They look gorgeous in the sunshine out there in the park. And so that makes it very hard for me to take my attention away from the trees and start the meditation. Little things like that show you how attention works. The mind will always go to the most delightful object, and we almost like encourage those delightful objects according to how the Buddha taught meditation. So that's a little introduction. So now we can actually start. I'll give the guidance for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then that guidance is just to encourage you, and then we go off into some nice quiet meditation. I'll give you about half an hour by yourselves, where you just see what happens. Don't guide your mind, just give your mind freedom and it will go to where it needs to go, the delight of peace. Okay, so, what's now? Close your eyes if you haven't done so already. And always make sure that your body is comfortable. And sometimes you may think your body is comfortable. You may assume that. But so often when I start meditating, I become much more careful to make sure that each part of my body is relaxed and at ease. I start with the bottom of my body, the feet, and I start there because there's nothing much going on there. And it's a nice place to start because when you start, your mindfulness is quite weak. You get stronger as you go further up the body, and your mindfulness and kindness start working together and do become stronger. So I start with a place like even my toes. And so many years ago I thought, that's what a stupid thing to do. The toes, there's nothing going on down there. But over the years I've developed enough sensitivity that my mindfulness can pick up the feeling in the toes. They have nerve endings down there, so there are some feelings going on. You just have to put some attention down there and feel them, and it's a delightful feeling. It's an easy thing to do. And making sure at the same time the toes are content. And once the toes are pretty relaxed, I don't just move away from them too quickly. Just picking up with the theme of today's meditation, I feel the delight there, very subtle pleasure. They're relaxed, they're at ease. Have happy toes. And then I can go to the rest of my feet, the soles and the uppers and the heels, and making sure all of those, there's no pressure on them. They feel good. And sometimes when I do meditation instructions over the internet, I always try to ensure that I wear no shoes or sandals or socks or anything, so that my feet can feel the texture of the carpet. In this case, my feet are on the cushion, the mat, and I can feel that mat with the side of my feet. And I don't just assume I know this, I really get into it and feel it more and more fully, allowing my mindfulness to increase. The stronger my mindfulness becomes, the more sensations it picks up, just the more peaceful it is and the more delightful it is. I use the word delight because it's a positive feeling. Pleasure people are a bit afraid of. And sometimes they think, how can you feel pleasure in your feet? But delight is a more accurate word. It's a good feeling. And I go past the heels of the feet to the ankles. Sometimes people do have sore ankles. And I just allow my attention to rest on my ankles. I don't go through them, I just stop there for a while. And you may notice when you stop on any part of the body, say your ankles, after a few seconds you can pick up more sensations there. You can see more. And I'm not sure about you, but when your mindfulness gets strong, those feelings in the ankles become quite interesting. There's many feelings down there. And when you can experience those sensations in your ankles, you also find just by a change of attitude here, a change of attitude there, you can actually relax those feelings. tightnesses, pulling, tension becomes less. Things which were squashed now seem to open out. And your ankles relax. Really relax, you can feel them happening. You know there's a delightful experience at the end of relaxing any part of your body. But then I go further up my legs, making sure that the skin, I can feel the skin on my calves and the muscles inside, making sure everything is cared for. When people, sometimes when I ask some of the monks, just how are you today? Are you sure you're okay? Just by showing that I care for them, and they smile. In a big monastery, that sometimes you can ignore people, not on purpose, just because of the amount of work you have. But just stopping and saying, how are you? Or to any one of you. That actually gives you a boost of energy and happiness. You're not insignificant, you matter. And that's how I treat my body. Every part of my body matters. And so when I go past the calves and the bones of my calves and the skin to my knee, every part of those calves, those lower legs, feel that they have been looked after. They're not just slaves and exploited, they're cared for. And that keeps them healthy. When I get to the knees, and I always go to the knees first of all, that they feel there's nothing happening down there. I've got quite healthy knees. There's no damage down there, there's no accidents or anything down there. But then I look deeper. I relax those knees. And even though they're not moving, any tightness there, any like holding muscles and stretching them, I loosen that. And I don't make these things up. I just can feel the knees becoming more and more at ease, as if they're just resting on these satin-covered cushions. And they're relaxing deeply into those cushions. And they feel more and more delightful. I go to the thighs, big lumps of muscle and bone and skin. And I just check them, make sure that they are at ease as well. And if I come to any part which is tight, I just loosen that tightness. How do you do that? First of all, it's like trial and error. Later on, you realize that you are sometimes stretching muscles which don't need to be stretched. And after a while, just even imagining those muscles being loosened. You're not holding on to both ends and pulling them apart. You're letting them be natural, at ease. No tension on them. And then even the thigh muscles start to open out and ease off. And the same with my butt as I go down there. And it's not that you move the butt, it's just you contemplate those muscles. They're under tension because there's a heavy body squashing those muscles against the cushion. But you allow that feeling just to be, you let it be, you don't try and change it. And after a while that too relaxes as much as it possibly can. And from there you go up to the waist. And my goodness, every time this happens, that when I start the meditation I think I'm comfortable, but when my awareness increases, I realize that my waist is uncomfortable, and all it needs to do is a little bit of stretching of the back, which I've just done, and now my waist feels really good. It just teaches me that sometimes when I start meditating, the mindfulness isn't strong enough. It hasn't really grown yet. And it needs that focusing to be able to see just little mistakes in posture which I had at the beginning. So once I've adjusted that, my back feels good. Just my spine is nicely aligned. And I feel I can meditate like this for hours. But then I go up the internal part of my body, up the digestive tracts. And if there's ever any tightness there, any ache, any sense of, I've eaten the wrong thing or something, then what I do is just focus on that sensation, that sort of little ache in the digestive tract. Give it kindness. It relaxes, it disappears. You can relax your own digestive tract, which is weird, but that's the best way to describe it. And so that part of my body again feels at ease, relaxed, delightful. And as I go up the body to the stomach, making sure that's all happy, and to the other organs, I go up there because sometimes people have sicknesses, tightnesses, tension in those inner parts of your body, and that could cause you great sickness, even kill you. So as I go through these, I relax everything. People very rarely die of relaxation. It's really like tightness somewhere, some stress, which makes you panic, and you stress some more and cause yourself damage. When you're really relaxed and at ease, the body feels at ease. I go up to my shoulders and relax those, having no tension there at all. How do you do that? You can imagine again that any muscle has got two ends to it, and some invisible spirit is at one end, another spirit is in the other end, and they're stretching you apart, putting these muscles under tension when they don't need to be. So you just invite those little monsters or spirits just to let go. When I do that, the mindfulness gives me the feedback and the muscles relax. They feel good. I go down the arms slowly, past the elbows, giving them a little bit of attention, some TLC, as I say, tender loving care. Down to the wrists and to the hands, adjusting the fingers. So the whole two arms have been carefully attended to, settled and put in a posture which is comfortable for them. And I know some people say, put your hands on your knees or put your hands this way or that way on your lap. There's no formula which works for everybody. You find what works for you. What do you feel is comfortable? And then when my hands and arms feel relaxed, they're not I'm not dominating them, I'm just caring for them. Then I go back up to my shoulders and the neck. And I give my head a little tilt back and forth, just to make sure my neck is at ease. I did read in a medical article that sometimes people get migraines when their head is not in a good position on top of their neck. I make sure that never happens by just feeling the different positions of my head on my neck and getting the best position, what feels the best. I don't even look in a mirror or decide it should be balanced this way or that way. I just know it by sensations. Use my intuition. And then lastly I go to the front of my face. Muscles around the eyes, the nose and the mouth. I can feel some tension in there. So I release that tension by just allowing those muscles to be at ease. In the same way you can screw up your face, the same way you can relax your face. You learn that's a pretty simple thing to do. As I often say that if you relax the muscles around your eyes and your mouth, you also relax many emotions, negative emotions. The mind feels more at peace. Before I go to the mind though, I just feel the whole body. The mindfulness is now much stronger than when I started. I can feel much more. And because I can feel much more, I can pick up some places in the body which do need a little bit extra attention. And I allow myself to go there. Relax my stomach a bit more, so it feels at ease. And then I can feel the whole body, just like I step back a little bit and see the body as a whole, one organism. And I've cared for many parts of it. And it feels relaxed. It feels at ease. And that feeling of ease is honestly delightful. Sometimes you tuck yourself in bed at night and you're really comfortable. Or you wake up early in the morning, you don't have to get out of bed. It's a delightful place to be in. Now I'm feeling that delight even more so in my meditation posture. It feels so comfortable I don't want to move. But that delight is important. When I'm aware, my object of my awareness is the delight, it's easy to focus on. The mind doesn't wander off. It's enjoying itself. It doesn't fall into sloth and torpor. It'd be missing the delight of relaxation. It doesn't start being restless, because it would miss the beauty of a relaxation. And this is only starting that type of delight. And now, of course, I go into the mind. I just ask myself how peaceful I am. So instead of focusing on parts of the body, I'm focusing on this thing we call peace, which lives in the mind. And what does that peace feel like? It's quite obvious. Most peace is letting go of past or letting go of future. It's not something you do, but you allow the past to disappear. You let it disappear. Don't give it importance. You learn much more from the present than you ever learned from the past. And you let the future vanish. Now is where your future is being made. People who really care about the future should spend more time in the present. The only time you can create anything. when you come into the present moment, that is really delightful. There's no past, no future. You're free of so much stuff. And we always worry about things in the future, carry the burden of the past with us. Being able to put all of that down, just have this moment right now. Soon our energies come back, and the present moment when you're mindful of it, not with force, but because it pulls you in, and it's joyful. Just being now. But to strengthen that present moment, it's good to have silence. There's no need to keep notes or have a commentary. Don't think what this means. Feel what this means. Use your emotional knowledge, not the words. I find that's far more profound. And you see, all this time we've had no goals to achieve. We haven't been trying to get somewhere. All the time we're just being here. Not going places, but staying still. And much of what you wanted in meditation is now right with you. How stupid was all this wanting? It's counterproductive. So you feel peace. Depending on how much peace and silence you have inside, that will decide how much delight you feel. When you're really at peace and nothing's being said inside. It's a very joyful state to be in. And you will notice automatically, sooner or later, you become aware of your breathing. Naturally, it draws you in. And all you read about in the classical descriptions of breath meditation just happen. You don't make it happen. It's an automatic process. I will be quiet now until closer to the end of the meditation. getting close to the end of the meditation now. How do you feel inside? Is your emotional sensitivity to know the joy of peace and the profundity of silence? You don't need to react, so the mind becomes peaceful and still. And it gets a special type of joy and energy. Even if it didn't get that deep, still you'll probably know it's much more still, peaceful, enjoyable than when you started. Please encourage your mind to recognize the power of peace and stillness and the joy of it. So your mind, when it closes its eyes and starts meditating, will leap towards it. It's one of its favorite activities. You want to call it an activity. You know how to tap in to the inner peace. And it's afterwards, when we come out of the meditation, you'll be able to feel just how it allows the mind to have insights and wisdom. How does your body feel? And why? I will now ring the gong 3 times. After it finishes ringing for the 3rd time, you may open your eyes and come out of the meditation. So we could have the questions now. Very good. You do the ones from overseas. Very good. Thank you. Oh, it's gone. Please come back. Oh, it's disappeared, it's vanished into stillness. Okay, just one question, great. Should I do meditation when I experience extremely difficult emotions, like periods of emotional breakdown? Usually, if you can do that meditation just before the emotions get very difficult, then you can avoid those difficult periods of emotional instability. It's like when you're really, really hungry, you don't have to wait till you almost collapse before you take some food. If you're really thirsty, take some water beforehand, have enough mindfulness. You can see these things happening and you can take action before they get too far. One of the monks I knew, he actually came here for a little while, many years ago. He was a Marine in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. He got shot in the back of the head. Please excuse me for saying this, but it knocked some sense into him. And when he was cashiered out of the army with a nice pension, He played around for a while, then he became a monk. And then he started getting some epileptic fits. But the way he dealt with those epileptic fits, because of the damage done to his brain, that he was mindful enough to see that the epileptic fits don't just happen. There's a causal sequence which happens beforehand. And he would catch that epileptic fit earlier and earlier and earlier. He could see what was happening until he caught it so early he could take another action so he didn't have those fits anymore. He would go into his room and just sit in the quietness. You have to catch them early enough before it's beyond avoidance, and then it's pretty easy to avoid. So emotional, extremely difficult emotions, find out where they come from, how they arise, and notice the signs that you're going close to a very, very powerful breakdown. And then you can take action before. Take action, that's a word we use in English. It's like take inaction, calm the mind down, make peace, and then it doesn't happen anymore. You find a quiet place, sit down, and you find the emotions get calmed down. Whether it's fear, depression, anxiety, panic, or whatever, you find that they've been fed and they soon build up so much momentum you can't stop them. Catch them early and they're pretty easy to stop. Ajahn, how to practice mindfulness of the breath outside meditation to maintain a continuous peace of mind? You cannot maintain continuous peace of mind because you have to do things in this world. You have to, for example, you have to make the decision you need to go to the toilet. You can't just say, I'm not going to go to the toilet anymore in my life. So in other words, you have to do things sometimes. But in the meditation, that's the time that you can really get into deep stillness. That's why we call it meditation time. And it's nothing better than the time when you're in a quiet, safe place. You can sit down on a chair, on a cushion, and just get into deep states of peace. You can't do that while you're walking to the toilet. So, mindfulness of the breath, you don't always do mindfulness of the breath. Even in deep meditation, the breath takes you to a very deep state of mind, and it's usually to the nimittas, these beautiful lights which appear in the mind. As you are developing the delightful experiences in the mind gets so still, the breath actually is not really needed anymore. It's done its job. And you get very peaceful, see these beautiful lights in the mind. Your mindfulness is strong enough. It happens naturally. The mindfulness is strong enough to just understand. You don't need to be afraid or excited, just leave it alone. And then from the nimittas, that takes you into the jhanas. And of course, these are different levels of deep meditation. It's like there's a simile, I've quoted this before, of the king Ajatasattu went to see the Buddha for the first time. And they say he took his chariot as far as chariots could go. And he got down from the chariot and he walked as far as he could walk with his sandals on. When he got to the hall where the Buddha was, he had to take his sandals off. He used the shoes as far as shoes could take him. And then he took them off and walked barefoot into the hall to see the Buddha. Each of these different vehicles can only take you so far. And the breath can only take you so far. It takes you into the realm of the nimittas, and from the nimittas, that takes you into the realm of the jhanas. So each of these vehicles has a different purpose and more refined. So the breath disappears in meditation. And don't try and hold on to it. It's done its job. Keep the a sense that you're not controlling anything, you're letting it happen. You're getting out of the way and it happens quite easily. And then you find this is just the nature of what you observe. So it's nothing what you do, it's just what happens. So don't always practice mindfulness of the breath. I often say if some of you are driving me back to Bodhinyana Monastery, please don't be aware of your breath, be aware of the traffic. Or somebody asked me yesterday, should you always be attached? And I said, no. So they said, you always be detached. I said, no. If you're riding on the back of a motorcycle through heavy traffic, please be attached. Don't let go. Otherwise you'll fall off the motorbike and you'll kill yourself. So there are times to be detached, to let go, and there's times to do things. But when you're meditating, that's the time to let go. Okay, any questions from the floor? Okay, that's nice, only a couple of questions and no questions from the floor. This afternoon, later on, I have a Zoom conference with London, so I won't be able to stay too long to answer questions, but I'll be able to stay till 4:30. Okay? Great. Okay, so now pay respects to Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and then we can go and do what we needed to do. Is it a Be Quiet group tonight, or is it, okay, you can look after the Be Quiet? Okay. Good. Oh. Pretty nice. Sorry?